Imagine waking up, just as the first rays of sunlight break through your window, to a world that feels familiar. Yet, in a matter of hours, everything has changed. You check your phone and discover that the rules of the global economy have shifted overnight, sending ripples through every corner of the planet. For years, tariffs on imported goods like steel and aluminum have quietly but powerfully reshaped supply chains, influenced international diplomacy, and affected prices on everything from cars to canned soup. These policies have touched the lives of millions, from factory workers to everyday shoppers. But today, that entire framework has been upended in a single dramatic moment. In a landmark decision that experts say will be analyzed for decades, the United States Supreme Court has redrawn the boundaries of presidential power, sending shockwaves far beyond U.S. borders and into the heart of the global economy. The tariffs, first enacted during the Trump administration, marked a sharp and controversial break from decades of U.S. trade policy that favored globalization and free trade, sparking intense debate across the political spectrum. Justified under a rarely used 1962 law linking imports to national security, these tariffs ignited fierce arguments at home and abroad about the true cost and benefit of protectionism. The core question at the heart of the controversy: how much power should one person, the president, have to unilaterally shape the nation's economic destiny, potentially impacting millions of lives with the stroke of a pen? The Supreme Court's answer today is decisive and immediate. Stock markets are reacting with volatility, world leaders are preparing responses and recalibrating their strategies, and businesses, both large and small, are bracing for a wave of change that could redefine their futures. This is more than just an economic story. It's a pivotal turning point in American governance and its evolving role on the world stage. The story of these tariffs and their ultimate demise is a critical chapter in America's ongoing relationship with itself and the world, a story that will shape the future for generations to come. Today, the Supreme Court delivered its long-awaited verdict in American Institute for International Steel v. United States. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that the broad application of tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act was an unconstitutional overreach of executive authority. The majority opinion stated that while the executive has a role in national security, that power is not unlimited and cannot be used to enact sweeping economic policies reserved for Congress. The ruling narrows Section 232, requiring a clear, direct link between an import and a genuine threat to national defense, and signals a legal reset for how the U.S. engages with the global economy. To truly understand today's landmark ruling, we need to revisit the origins and evolution of Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, a law that has shaped decades of U.S. trade policy. Born out of Cold War anxieties, Section 232 gave the president sweeping authority to restrict imports if they were deemed a threat to national security. It was designed as a last resort tool, meant to be used only in genuine defense emergencies, not for routine economic concerns. For decades, this power was rarely invoked. Instead, Congress and international agreements managed most trade policy, keeping Section 232 in the background as a safeguard rather than a weapon. That all changed dramatically in 2018, when the Trump administration invoked Section 232 to justify sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum. The administration argued that the health of domestic industries was essential for future defense readiness, expanding the definition of national security. This broad and controversial interpretation led to tariffs on nearly every country, including some of America's closest allies. The move sparked a wave of legal challenges and ignited political backlash both at home and abroad. Domestic companies filed lawsuits, foreign governments retaliated with their own tariffs, and the World Trade Organization was drawn into the escalating dispute, questioning the legitimacy of the U.S. actions. The legal battle soon centered on a crucial question: did Congress ever intend for the president to have such a broad and unchecked definition of national security under Section 232? The Supreme Court has now delivered its answer: no. The justices ruled that the law's intent was far narrower than recent interpretations suggested. With this decision, the law returns to its original limited purpose, meant for targeted, specific threats, not sweeping economic measures. The era of using Section 232 as a catch-all for economic protectionism is over, marking a significant shift in how America approaches trade and national security. At its core, this Supreme Court decision is a lesson in American civics and the separation of powers. The Constitution grants Congress, not the President, the authority to set tariffs and regulate foreign commerce. Over time, Congress delegated some trade powers to the President for efficiency, but only with clear guidelines. The key legal question: did Section 232, as used, erase those guidelines and give the President unchecked power? The court agreed it did, finding the administration's broad interpretation lacked a meaningful limit and violated the separation of powers. By striking down the tariffs, the court reinforced that Congress cannot give away its core constitutional responsibilities. The ruling reasserts that the ultimate authority to regulate foreign commerce and impose taxes rests with the legislative branch. This decision will shape the actions of all future presidents. The balance of power has been recalibrated. Trade policy is back where the Constitution intended, in Congress's hands. For American businesses, the end of steel and aluminum tariffs brings both relief and a fresh set of challenges. After years of uncertainty, companies are now able to look ahead with renewed optimism, but must also adapt to a shifting global landscape. Manufacturers in key sectors like automotive, aerospace, construction, and appliances will see lower costs for essential raw materials, making it easier to manage budgets and improve profit margins. Major companies such as Ford, GM, and Boeing can now compete more effectively, both at home and in international markets, thanks to reduced input costs and fewer trade barriers. Smaller businesses like craft breweries, local construction firms, and independent manufacturers also benefit from cheaper materials, which can help them grow, hire more workers, and invest in innovation. A 2021 U.S. International Trade Commission study found the tariffs caused a nearly $1 billion net loss for the U.S. economy, highlighting the broad impact on businesses and consumers alike. However, domestic steel and aluminum producers, who thrived under protection, now face renewed global competition. Many are lobbying for new safeguards, concerned about job security and the future of American manufacturing. The ruling restores predictability to supply chains, ending years of volatility and uncertainty that made planning and sourcing difficult for many companies. With more stable trade rules, businesses can plan investments and sourcing with greater confidence, allowing for smarter long-term strategies and better relationships with suppliers. The return to a rules-based system is perhaps the most significant long-term benefit, ensuring fair competition and a level playing field for all. The era of trade policy by executive whim is over, replaced by a more predictable and transparent approach to international commerce. Stability and clarity are back in the business landscape, giving companies the confidence to expand, invest, and innovate. The corporate world is adjusting to this new normal, embracing opportunities while preparing for the challenges that come with a more open and competitive global market. Tariffs may seem abstract, but their impact hits home for American consumers. Higher steel and aluminum costs led to price hikes on cars, appliances, canned goods, and more, effectively a hidden tax. Studies show the full cost of tariffs was passed on to consumers, disproportionately affecting lower and middle-income families. The removal of tariffs should gradually lower prices as manufacturers' costs fall, though the process will take time. Don't expect overnight savings. Supply chains are complex, and some companies may keep the extra margin. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries also hurt U.S. exporters and complicated domestic pricing. With trade tensions easing, American-made goods should become more competitive abroad. The end of the trade war means a more natural, competitive marketplace for all. Consumers stand to benefit from restored stability and lower prices. The Supreme Court's decision is a global event, not just a domestic one. U.S. allies like Canada, Mexico, and the EU see the ruling as a return to sanity and a chance to rebuild trust. Retaliatory tariffs on American goods are expected to be lifted, boosting U.S. exporters. The U.S. must now rely on traditional diplomacy and multilateral agreements rather than unilateral threats. The World Trade Organization regains relevance as the U.S. re-engages with established international rules. Strategic rivals like China and Russia are watching closely. This ruling strengthens Western alliances but also signals limits on presidential power. The U.S. will need to find new ways to address unfair trade practices. The global trade landscape is shifting, with alliances recalibrated and old tensions easing. America's approach to economic statecraft is entering a new era. The world is watching how the U.S. adapts. The Supreme Court's ruling creates a new blueprint for American trade policy, one that relies on Congress, not executive orders. Future presidents will need explicit congressional authorization to impose tariffs for national security reasons. Congress is now back in the driver's seat and a flurry of legislative activity is expected. The debate will shift to Capitol Hill with lawmakers battling over how much power the president should have. The underlying issues, globalization, job loss, and industrial decline, remain unresolved. New solutions may include targeted measures against unfair trade, investment in domestic manufacturing, or support for displaced workers. Policies passed by Congress are more stable and durable than executive actions. The era of trade policy by decree is ending, replaced by deliberation and consensus. The U.S. is poised for a more predictable, sustainable approach to global trade. The next chapter will be written in Congress, not the Oval Office. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn the Trump-era tariffs is a watershed moment for American law, business, and diplomacy. By narrowing the definition of national security, the court has returned trade authority to Congress and set a new standard for executive power. Businesses and consumers will see immediate and long-term effects, from lower costs to more stable supply chains. America's allies welcome the move, while the debate over protectionism versus free trade shifts to Congress. The nation now faces the challenge of forging a coherent, stable trade strategy in a divided political climate. The future of America's role in the global economy will be shaped not by executive order, but by legislative debate and consensus.